Let us understand what is an unconscious bias. These are the social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. It's important for an interviewer to be unbiased while selecting a candidate for employment. It's also important that the organization spread awareness about biases within the employees, so that employees are not biased towards their coworkers, and there is a shift towards an inclusive culture. Let's start with the halo effect bias. Under this bias, the interviewer becomes biased towards one positive trait of a person. For example, a person with fluency in English might be assumed to be more smart than a person who struggles in speaking English. Horn effect is exact opposite of the halo effect bias. Under this bias, a person becomes biased towards one negative trait of a person. For example, if a person is out of shape, it might be assumed by the interviewer that the person lacks motivation. As the name suggests, illusory correlation is a bias when there is an illusion of correlation between two phenomena where there exists no such relationship. For example, a man assumes that a person from a rural area might be poor in communication skills. Affinity bias is a tendency of gravitating toward others who are similar to us. For example, if the interviewer and interviewee are from the same hometown, the interviewer might subconsciously become biased toward the interviewee. Conformity bias is a tendency of people to behave similarly to others around them rather than using their personal judgment. For example, in a panel interview, if one of the members decides to select a candidate, other panelists might move towards making the same decision too. Gender bias refers to a person receiving different treatment based on the person's real or perceived gender identity. For example, gender bias might be observed when employer rewards employee of one gender more than other gender irrespective of their performances. Confirmation bias is a tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs or values. For example, if an employer is convinced that an employee has to be fired, he or she might explicitly look for reasons to confirm his or her decision than looking the candidate from a neutral lens. Anchoring bias is relying too heavily on one piece of information and looking at the other set of information from the reference point of our anchor than looking at it objectively. For example, if you are a customer and you have seen the cost of a product as ₹100 if you see the same product at ₹80 in the neighboring shop, you are likely to buy the product from the second shop irrespective of examining its actual worth. When a person tends to make a decision based on his or her guts without caring about where the data is pointing, it's an intuition bias. For example, a person trading in a share market might invest in a certain company based on his or her guts without examining its financial data. Overconfidence bias is a tendency of people to be more confident in their abilities than the actual level of their abilities. For example, 90% of drivers think that they drive better than an average driver. Affect-heuristic bias is a tendency of people of relying on emotions to make snap decisions than make a rational decision. For example, people feel happy when they order pizza. While ordering pizza, customer is likely to rely on emotions than thinking about the negative effects on health. Contrast effect bias occurs when a person makes a decision based on comparison and not studying things in silos. For example, an interviewer might assess a candidate based on the interview with other candidates. Ideally, an interviewer must evaluate a candidate separately based on the criteria of evaluation.